Everybody can hear me here. It's in the segment here live. I wonder if there's a contract with NASA that has that talking about a train, a train segment. Company is initially doing this for a segment, but it's definitely one of those situations where we are not being told about these contracts. I don't know if you guys are aware, but I am going to start my segment going and invite people. So hopefully we can continue that rats, right? As far as contracts. And when I was talking about diversifying, so you need to get your EIN number, right? Business contract, and also you really need to open that up with. The reason why I'm saying this is because I need to get AI in my business. Alongside getting my business ID, I definitely want to get across with a contract because you need your SIM ID for military grade contracts, and that should be subjected to opening up the ban as far as you can see military grade contracts and other contracts for civilians. I understand right now they have passed a contract for having a what's it called, a train on the moon. I don't know if you guys are familiar. There's apparently a contract public of a company that has opened up a segment for a train on the moon, I believe, and it's supposed to basically that would be wild, right? Having a orbiting train on the moon, that would definitely be a unique perspective. So, wonder how everybody's doing this Saturday morning. Where is everybody from? Apparently, right now I'm in Clearwater, so I mean here in Florida. So, this is like one of my first casting, bringing it up here and trying to get the information out because I think at the end of the day, we're all subject to that, right? We're all subject to misinformation and interrogation of basically people running their own agenda. Not realizing, dudes, that we as a people, as a UFO community, are just trying to get the information out there. Right? That's all we're trying to do. Get to the reality. So hopefully we can do that with this segment. I invited Yeti Chips. I don't know if he's aware of it. He's probably offline right now. But I think at the end of the day, man, we need to understand that. Also, I can see your comments if you just chat there too, so that'd be really cool. So I think at the end of the day, man, is there's a contract I'm understanding for the moon, and it involves a train, orbiting train on the moon. And this orbiting train would definitely go a long way to moving around objects and materials in that orbiting train. Alongside that, we are talking about there's another contract with I believe it's called Aeronetics. That was $20 million contract, and that $20 million contract appreciated that. And I appreciate it. Keep the good fight. Yeah, I think that's one the public and keep informing. I appreciate that comment. To be honest with you, um, like I said, I am trying to cross contract right now, so I'm levy to Sam's contract for basically the common folk like you and me. We can go on there on SAM or gov.gov and be able to look at current contracts that are open. So I'm definitely going to be able to see other people's contracts and be able to maybe not necessarily get all the information, but levy to who's winning the contracts and who's ready to be subject to those contracts. So that's a really unique perspective. Like example, I don't know if you guys know, but I have like about a decade in Lockheed Martin. So my LinkedIn is connected with a lot of people that are in the Lockheed Martin and all. And I don't know if you know, but there was a recent president of Lockheed, a CEO that has came out of retirement and got hired in for intelligence gathering apparatus for Lockheed Martin. So basically, equipment for gathering data and stuff, surveillance, has basically come out of retirement. So I get random notifications like that, and of course I get job recruiters calling me all the time. Which they do that all the time. I'm like a sheet metal mechanic by trade, so on structural and aircraft. So that's a primary like 16 F-16 uh, CH-47 small parts and structural big parts like the cockpit. The primary in my field was the F-16, so I'm like did the cockpit, did the internals, did the explosives. You know that levee they pull where the cockpit would explode and shoot out the guy. Um, so yeah, what's up, old man? How you doing, brother? I figure I start doing this on a regular basis. We don't do this quite enough, and I know. Um, Hi, how you doing? How you doing, brother? This message is held for review. Okay. Oh wow. Oh man, you're crazy, bro. Saying the N word there. That's wow. Don't know, you never know who you're gonna get, man. Yeah, he caught it. He caught that word, bro. How you doing, Lilia? I appreciate the comments. Yes, so I think that at the end of the day, man, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about basically getting information out there, disclosure, and hopefully we can uh, get out there and talk about it. I wonder why they didn't hold that stupid comment he made open. What's that? What is it? Robots? Do I play robots? No, I don't play robots, old man. I don't play robots. I don't even know what that means. You talking about video games? Well, anyway, what I'm understanding is that currently they have a contract that is going to basically install a train on the moon, right? And that contract, I'm understanding, is already contracted out. Someone already has signed it. So now, that being said, they also have another contract with um, what is it called? Aeronautics, and that one is $20 million contract. They have that basically an orbital ship in space, right? An orbital ship in space. So, which is pretty unique, right? As far as having a military grade orbiting ship in space that would fly in our space and have craft landing and basically flying off in our in our upper atmosphere, which is pretty crazy, man. If you think about that, having a ship that's basically owned by our Air Force, Space Force, I'm sorry, and that is basically designed for you to land and fly off orbital spaceships. Tell me that's not nuts in itself, dude. It's really nuts, bro. Just to know that they just spent $20 million, basically what we would know as a cruise ship, not a cruise ship, but a militarized ship in space that would be able to design for us to have orbiting craft in outer space. That in itself is very unique. Just to get that perspective out, right? So we're definitely looking at things that are coming, man. And there's a whole storyline on this that basically talk about that, guys. So I am getting out there. You just gotta get the information out there, right? Not a lot of people know that these works. It is very unique just to talk about and get the information out because not much people are talking about this. Not much people are talking about these military contracts that are issued out that are coming out and talking about. You see what I'm saying? So that's pretty wild, man. I think at the end of the day, man, we're just talking about what we're talking about and just keeping the train going. And hopefully we can keep that mojo going, man. As far as what we can do. Let's see here. Give your attention, get attention, right? Well, I got my first like. I don't know who did that, but that's fucking awesome. Yeah. So that's definitely a perspective, bro. The alien contact and alien footage, and we're just talking about how that corroborates with our information here, dude. That definitely helps a lot. Uh, just knowing that there's current contracts on the books of Mars projects, currently projects in the books to on the moon. They have a train station on the moon, which that would be really unique to have a train on there, right? I'm sure they're going to use it just to collect. I don't think people are expecting, like, oh, they're going to mine, they're going to mine. But I mean, in essence, look how when you see these guys on the moon, right? You see how hard it is for them to move around, and they're using different methods. If we construct a train on the moon, right? You know how fast we were able to go around the moon now? How fast we can collect data, uh, set up equipment on the moon. I don't know if you ever guys play. There's a game. There's a military game. Basically, as soon as you put a train technology, basically you move like super fast in the game. As far as strategic, as far as supplies, as far as everything else, right? So it would definitely be a strategic way on getting materials, getting information that we need, going to test sites, and is using this basically train station or this train apparatus to basically work on moving stuff around the moon. So, I mean, that would be unique in itself. Just to generally know that we're doing that and we can continue to do that in the apparatus. And that contract's already supposedly, the rumor mill supposedly is that it's already been signed, it's already been given out. Now, that being said, there's also another contract, and that one was issued, and that was public. That one issued with, I think it's um, aeronetics, and that one was contract to check this out, a flying cruise ship or flying militarized ship in our atmosphere. Can you imagine that? You remember what is it with Iron Man and all that, where they had this big flying cruise ship or military ship that other craft would land and take off from. We're talking about something like that, guys. That is what we're talking about. Something like that that would inherently be in space for landing and taking off satellites, supposed satellites, right? I'm thinking, well, you see the picture they have, it's much different than this is satellite. Way much different than a satellite because we're definitely not just talking about satellite. We're talking about this. Imagine one of our military ships. Imagine that, but not in the water. A landing station for other uh, craft we have up in outer space. Higher ground, right? That's all we're talking about is higher ground. So imagine that. It's higher ground, militarizing space, and it's like trying to make sure I got everything here. So, hey, don't be shy to say hi, man. I'll appreciate it. So, I mean, we're all subjected to this, misinformation, right? Especially when the apparatus is getting so big where we continue to do this. And, yeah, so let me go back here. So I think that's initially what we need to do, man. Hopefully everybody can get subjected to that and get some information out there because I'm pretty sure no one was aware about that crash, right? And basically a military contract that was given out to start doing studies on having a orbital military craft that can land and fly while be basically imagine what we have right now. We have the ISS, right? International Space Station. Okay. Now, we have that in our head because it's been up there for a very long time. So imagine, basically a military spaceship. Okay. Imagine like our you know how we have a military cruise ship on water. Imagine something like that, but and floating in outer space for landing and takeoff. That would be extraordinary as far as what we're doing, as far as what nearly things are happening in our space and time, right? So just to get some analyzing subjective information out there, what we're doing, dude. At the end of the day, bro, that's all we want. We want information. We're gonna expose the light and get that information out there, right? So I think that would be definitely a subjective tolerance of what we're doing, apparatus or apparandus of what is likely to be in our field of vision, right? Nothing here. So you can definitely get some perspective on that. And if we're militarizing space, man, it's just another time of space being militarized, and we have basically more than one cruise ship in our orbiting around our satellites. Because to have a basically like the Navy ships and having something equivalent to that in our upper atmosphere, a landing and taking off a Navy ship or what we're calling right now um, uh, spaceship, a spaceship in our upper atmosphere for landing and taking off is definitely a different animal in itself. They already had signed the contract. They had $20 million on this thing, right? So yes, $20 million is not a hell of a lot as far as military contracts, but the military contract would definitely go a long way is start studying this field, start studying what we have talked about and we have um, pushed together. And what I mean by that is that we're talking about the beginning workings of having a craft and technology to do this, right? And a lot of people say that, man, that's a lot of material to be shipped up there, right? And I agree. I totally agree. Military ship, that would definitely be a lot of expenditures. And I think that's what inherently what some people are saying what 3D editing or 3D printing would definitely work out because then you just bring the raw material up there and you can create that craft in space with raw material. And I think that will go a long way to um, bringing this technology fruition is 3D printing with robotics, right? So imagine you just ship a whole bunch of robots that can 3D fabricate um, this military ship in deep in space, right? And all you do is you ship out the raw material, meaning metal and copper and this raw material that can be a block, and it would take that, process that, and print it out, right? To any type of design that you need. And when we can do infrastructure, you can do just about any type of design, which would definitely go a long way as far as militarizing space or militarizing our atmosphere with what the image that they have is hold on, I just got a message here. Uh, there. I just got a message. Okay, cool. Yeah, someone was asking me because I recently posted a video on TikTok, right? And the TikTok was basically um, Anna Polina. Anna Polina basically stated about interdimensional beings. were aware about this was on Joe Rogan's live, so you guys are aware. And they were talking about interdimensional beings. Okay, now the interdimensional beings, she mentioned something about the technology. That the technology is with these beings are out of space and time, so they're not sequenced in our space and time. And I went into some detail about this. So basically, imagine you're creating a car, okay? And the car, every component out of the car is out of different time zones in our linear time, okay? So that means that not every component was all made at the same time. 2025, month, September, November, or whatever, right? That these parts that were made out of space and time wasn't all done in the same linear time that we have. Okay, so just get some perspective on that, right? So that means this is what whistleblowers have stated, right? That they try to back engineer the alien technology, and it would just fall into sawdust. So now imagine this: you take the carburetor out of this engine that is out of this space and time, right? And what happens is that the item out of space and time would go out of sync or harmonic sync with the components out of the part that you're taking off of that object. Okay? So imagine that happening, okay? Now, because the part was not created in your linear time, the part in essence does not exist. So it will fall into its rawest material form, resulting in basically the material or the part disassembling to its most rawest forms. Now, it's like, how would you back engineer something like that, right? It's like, it'd be nearly impossible to back engineer something like that that would fall apart. So there would gotta be tricks, right? Example, like these craft that are flying around, these UFO craft, they have discovered that there's frequencies associated with these military with these UFO craft, right? One of the frequencies is 5.04, right? And that 5.04 is associated with these craft. So now you start structuring maybe these parts that are connected with these components that are out of our space and time is subjected to this frequency. So imagine this, okay? The only reason these components can coexist is because it's harmonically connected to the frequency, thus keeping it stable, all the connected together. Okay? If you're with me so far, then we're basically, as soon as you take a part off of this craft, it comes out of harmonic frequency that's keeping it in tune with the other parts, components of this craft, thus falling apart in its rawest forms. So that is what this back engineering situation is causing, is that the whistleblowers that are trying to back engineer alien technology is seeing. They're seeing that when they take one of these components off, that because it would basically what they have described is that it falls, it becomes sand. So that's literally what is happening. Is that because these components weren't made during our time, search space and time, that the part that comes out would basically fall apart in its rawest form because during that period of time it did not exist. And what the consequence is that the frequency or the harmonic frequency that it was tuned into to keep it on the part that it was on the motor, it comes out of that space and time. So that's basically very the problem in which what we're talking about, right? We're talking about components that only exist in a harmonic frequency to keep it locked in sync of all the other components. And when you take one of those components off, you are talking about a component that basically does not exist in our linear time or what we understand about linear time. So that is stuff is super unique, right? So I keep you guys posted on that, man, because that is definitely remarkable. If that's the front of back is in there, one of my followers, but there would be signs. There would be showing, not necessarily direct link, but the raw you would know. Periodic take at least know the raw iron that was residence. Residence or matter that was left behind. On top of that, you have radiated. There we can start backtracking on, okay, this is literally after being affected by this crazy, right? Side effects of the exposed to this magnetic radiation resulted in the crop reacting a certain way, which was very unique, right? What the crop basically reacted was it increased its yield by 400%. 400% is yield of crop. The nutrition or the vitamin, the nutrition of the crop went up by 30% by being affected by magnetic radiation. So we could not make the craft, but we could recreate the effects, which resulted in a science around basically helping farmers, believe it or not, helping farmers create a bigger yield in their crop, which is crazy, right? Imagine that crop, but by studying crop circles from all things, we figured that out, man. Ain't that wild? That's wild on itself. Just to know that, just to figure that out. Now we're here talking about crop circles, not necessarily know how it was created, but finding finding basically tread marks per se in the crop of basically radiation, magnetic radiation left over, magnesium inside the crop kernels, the after effects of whatever had happened to that field, resulting into a new science helping helping farmers having bigger crop yields, which they can back engineer that. But the back engineer crop itself, no, we're not there yet with that. But that being said, there has been recently breakthroughs on metallurgies, which is definitely unique in perspective of what they have talked about. It is super awesome, right? So imagine you finding out recently they had technology breakthrough with metallurgy from back engineering these craft, and not because you get the full tech, but you get partial, right? You get partial acknowledgement, partial information, and the raw material is left from these craft that are coming in and out of a sequence of time, right? So that's definitely we need to know that and figure that out, right? And I think prospectively we just need to understand is that even though we can't recreate the car or the craft, we can definitely read and understand what was inherently happened in the wake, right? So that's definitely a unique perspective just to understand that and get that acknowledgement. And hopefully we can definitely get that information out there because at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for information, acknowledgement, and see what the government knows as far as these alien technologies that have been flying around in our atmosphere for millennia. You know, I don't think they showed up out of the blue. I think they've been here for a very long time. And I think we're talking about technology that has inherently been around us. I mean, you got it in cave paintings, you got it in paintings, oil paintings. You got newsletters, news articles in the 18th century, the 15th century, that are talking about this. You have it in religious texts with Amana Amana in the Indian text. You have it in different other subtexts that talk about these craft flying in and out of our solar system. Now, recently, there was a recent published peer review paper that was published for peer review, basically, basically observatory. Um, I don't remember what observatory it came from, but it was from the 1949 to 1957 that talks about these craft in our atmosphere. So imagine this: they got pictures, right? Stargazer, what's going on, brother? How you doing? So we're talking about basically footage, right, of observatory that have basically scanned the skies. They have it on these little discs. This is before video, right? 1949 to 1957, and they have collected a sequence of data over 100,000, and they're calling them transients. Okay, and with the transients, they're calling them transients because they basically sort of appear, and then with light they come back. And at first they thought it was random, right? And what inherently is wild about this is that they show up more frequent when we were doing nuclear testing, y'all. Nuclear testing. Can you imagine that? Nuclear testing? Nuclear testing. That's wild. That is extraordinary to know that. Just to know that we've been doing nuclear testing and these things show up 40% more in nuclear testing sites, right? And you guys got to realize 1949 and 1957, We had no orbiting satellites in our atmosphere. Nothing. We had nothing in our atmosphere. Nothing at all. So that's remarkable in itself, right? To have basically these templates that showed that there were craft floating in our upper atmosphere between 1949 to 1957. This is before we had satellites in our upper atmosphere, in our space and time, um, being pictured, being identified of something that they're calling a transient. So that in itself is very unique, right? Very unique, especially when you're talking about things that are floating in our atmosphere that we don't necessarily get up there at the time. At the time, right? That was before 1957. 1957, when they, I believe it was in October of 1957, when Russia sent its first satellite, Sputnik, up into space. You know, that was before the first satellite in history. So that's a unique perspective in itself, just to realize that what we're talking about is something that inherently nothing was in our upper atmosphere at the time. Nothing. 1949 to 1957. I think the study goes all the way to June of that year. That's the data. That's the data that was published and submitted to peer review study, guys. UAPs in our upper atmosphere during a period of time that there was no satellites in our atmosphere, which that in itself is amazing. That in itself is amazing. Just imagine the inherent information that was gathered. Uh, as after her co-worker, I think her name is Beatrice. Beatrice, her partner in this, right? Her partner in this basically uh, went on X and said, "Hey, we're on a mission discovering or identifying something so extraordinary of what they're finding that it's going to shake the world." Can you imagine that? It shakes the world. What they inherently know. That's wild. For us to know that and have some perspective in which we're getting this information out there, dude. That's wild in itself, man. And subjected to incredible ridicule because and danger for her life. I mean, she has stated multiple times, right? And then did the scientists that were involved or her colleagues even said, you know what, it's better for you to publish this to the public too. So it definitely gets some public notoriety as far as what is being controlled and what is not being controlled. And I mean, if you're public about it, then you have some layer of safety, because then um, what you're talking about is that's inherently safety for masses, right? Because it's like example, someone's chasing you, you want to go somewhere public, so there's witnesses. And I think that's one of the reasons why she not only submitted to being peer reviewed by UAPs, a peer review study that was submitted, but then she publicized what she submitted. So I think that was very smart of her to do that because then the public has some public interest on the submittal of the peer review study on UAPs, which that goes a long way of letting the public know is like not only that this information is real, that we have a actual case study of it, and we have paperwork, and also on top of that, this study was based on we're not having satellites in our upper atmosphere during this period of time when these discs were basically being imprinted on. for looking at the upper atmosphere, right? So this is before the era of Sputnik. So that in itself is definitely unique, right? And I think inherently what we have been gathering is that um, there's just more things are going to start coming out, man. And as scientists start gathering the data and realizing that this is a real thing, we're going to definitely push along with getting the information out there every day, right? So I think what inherently what we are subjected to and what information that is knowledgeable with the public and the government that we can definitely push this narrative. It's like, hey, we're not alone. And on top of that, we're not alone. That we're not afraid to say that. We're definitely not afraid to say that at all, right? Because we're here and we're free and we're acknowledging this to the public, right? And I think that in itself keeps everyone on the same field as far as understanding, hey, this is a real thing. The scientists are talking about this. Not only that scientists are talking about this, scientists have data and they're tracking these things and they're trying to get their mind around this subject, right? So I think that in itself is truly remarkable, right? That not only that scientists are involved in backtracking UAPs, but finding actual data of this topic, right? And finding actual information that this this crazy UFO stuff really does exist and have been recorded and have been in our upper atmosphere for a very long time. And I think that in itself is remarkable, right? Absolutely remarkable. Because we're always subjected to ridicule and to subjective information, but what we cannot argue is facts. The facts is that not only that it was something in our upper atmosphere that was basically contributing to these craft being up there, but inherently we have data during a period of time that there was not a satellite in space. No satellites in space. And I think that's just one of its nature. The biggest characteristic of this phenomenon is that itself, right? That we're talking about something that only in recent years have been coming mainstream more and more. And that seems like aliens are more concerned about our environment than we are at times, right? Because they definitely every information that you ever heard about whistleblowers or any information that you ever heard about people talking about this phenomenon, they're always concerned about what does that mean of for us. What does that mean about space? What do they want? And a lot of them say the same that major their major problem is how our world, what we're doing with our atmosphere, what we're doing with nuclear testing, what we're doing with basically right. And it's definitely takes a level of spectrum understanding, right? And I think we the scientists are starting to get people from the West now window now. Now scientists are collecting data now that they're submitting paperwork like betrayal that was submitted a peer review July. Affects us that we are not the subject to of UFOs, and they're starting to collect data. Review study, which is nuts, right? Nuts. Just to acknowledge that, and then that to start submitting this for peer review. And I think inherently these scientists, man, they want to be on the frontier, bro. They want to be on the frontier. I think everybody inherently one to say, hey, we discovered something. Hey, we were the first one in analysis, and we were able to back engineer this. Bro, that would be wild, bro. That would be wild, bro. Just to know that, man. Just for them to be like, what are you doing, man? What what is this, you know? I'll tell you one thing right now, man. Whoever scientist is able to not only talk about this, but break this down to a point where we can be acknowledged that this stuff exists, it will be headline news, man. Be headline news. Is that this paperwork was submitted by Beatrice, and then about reasonable insanity that it was taken seriously, and then that we can talk about that, man. So in the paperwork, she calls it transients, and the reason why she calls it transients is because they seem like they stay in our upper atmosphere during a period of time, and then when lights hit it a certain way, that they coexist in our upper atmosphere, right? So that's definitely a unique perspective, man. Just to find that out and realize that hey, these objects were up there way before we had satellites in space, way before we were able to um, contribute anything with NASA and all that. I mean, for crying out loud, you had Sputnik shooting with a craft in space way before we did, right? So that in itself is very unique, right? And I think at the end of the day, man, if we don't acknowledge that there's definitely something out there, we're definitely in deniability, bro. We're definitely in deniability. And to think that we're the only people in space is definitely crazy, bro. Considering everything of all the stuff that was flying in our upper atmosphere, flying into a. I'm just saying, bro. I'm just saying, it's like if she had enough data, right, to send this for peer review, and it was just her, and she's the only one doing it. Can you imagine when there's fleets of scientists, fleets of engineers that are interested in the subject? Because right now we only have one submittal in the past. She did another submittal in 2022, but they did not grab it for peer review. She submitted it, they ignored it. See what I'm saying? There's a dogma. There's this hatred on studying the UFO thing. There's this basically uh, no one wants to be caught dead studying UFOs. No one wants to be caught dead talking about UFO or UFO acknowledgement, right? So I think that's one of the dilemmas that we're talking about here, right? No one wants to be on the other side of that, and basically to talk about this, man. So I think that it's part of being subjected to your peers is a nut job, or subjected to your colleagues in your professional group as an outsider, right? And I think if we start acknowledging that, is that those people, those individuals that are the ones that change the world, those individuals are the ones that step out of line, that go towards what what they want. Is those are the individuals that make a change, man. Those are the individuals that basically make history. They make history. All the subjects in the world, they actually make history. And I think we need to acknowledge that as a community and realizes that sitting on the oddly onto the sidelines, especially on a topic that it sounds like scientists are starting to catch up to, and scientists are starting to study, is definitely inherently is stuff. Because in the last 30, 40 years, man, we've definitely been looking at that, right? We're definitely getting scientists starting to pique their interest on what they can study on this subject, right? And what we can contribute to this. And I think the fear in that is that I think the fear in that is definitely that people are fearful that we're not alone. We're not alone, guys. We've never been alone. We've been here on this earth, on this rock. People were alone the entire time. Not only we're not alone, we've been here the whole freaking time. That in itself is unique, right? To know that we're not the only intelligent life on this universe is is definitely one of those things, dude. That if scientists start studying this seriously, you're gonna soon find out that we've been visited for a very, very long time. And we're not subjected to this at all. And we're not inheritors of the earth, but only coexisters, right? Because this earth has been here way longer than we've been existing as humanity, or what we know as humanity, right? So I think that in itself is one of those situations where definitely need to understand, man, is that we are the human race, and the human race is amazing, especially when you have individuals like Beatrice that is not only taking the taking the wheel of investigation of UFOs and UAPs and finding out that these discs, the observatory collected data during 1949 all the way to 1957, satellites in outer space, that we definitely changing the table and the paradigm. This is the paradigm shift. If you're not a part of it, this is very unique time to be a part of UFO and the UAP phenomenon. And I'm just really happy to be part of it, right? And be subject to its acknowledgement. And I think inherently, man, what we're talking about is this, that we can all do this together, or we can do this apart. But we're all moving on this train together. Irregardless if you want to fight against the wheel or the frame, because uh, people are still arguing that does this even exist, right? And we're talking about just fields of study, and fields of individuals talking about this phenomenon. It's like it blows my mind that people still on the fence on does this thing even exist, and I think we should be like, okay, it obviously exists because they're passing they're passing bills in government in reference to this. They're passing bills in government to track this. They're passing bills in government now as early as July of 20, the 25th of documenting this and tracking this and having other protocols and procedures to study this phenomenon. So that in itself, and go after companies that have back engineered this stuff, dude. That's what we're talking about. That is, well, figure I'd come on here. I'll do an hour live, just talking about the subject, and I think I did my job here. And I hope you guys enjoyed the live and what it was. See a lot of people popping in and out. So we do this. It's like, bro, this is definitely probably. Keep you guys enjoying live. Take care. So I'll do this. Take care, guys.